The Gnat and the Bull. A gnat flew over the meadow with much buzzing for so small a creature, and settled on the tip of one of the horns of a bull. After he had rested a short time, he made ready to fly again. But before he left, he begged the bull's pardon for having used his horn for a resting place.
"You must be very glad to have me go now,"
he said.
"It's all the same to me,"
replied the bull.
"I did not even know you were there."
We are often of greater importance in our own eyes than in the eyes of our neighbor. The smaller the mind, the greater the conceit. The Plane Tree. Two travelers, walking in the noonday sun, sought the shade of a wide-spreading tree to rest. As they lay looking up among the pleasant leaves, they saw that it was a plane tree.
"How useless is the plane,"
said one of them.
"It bears no fruit whatever, and only serves to litter the ground with the leaves."
"Ungrateful creatures,"
said a voice from the plane tree.
"You lie here in my cooling shade, and yet you say I'm useless? Thus ungratefully, O Jupiter, do men receive their blessings."
Our best blessings are often the least appreciated. The Farmer and the Stork. A stork of a very simple and trusting nature had been asked by a gay party of cranes to visit a field that had been newly planted. But the party ended dismally, with all the birds entangled in the meshes of the farmer's net. The stork begged the farmer to spare him.
"Please let me go,"
he pleaded.
"I belong to the stork family, who are honest and birds of good character. Besides, I did not know the cranes were going to steal."
"You may be a very good bird,"
answered the farmer,
"but I caught you with the thieving cranes, and you will have to share the same punishment with them."
You are judged by the company you keep. The Sheep and the Pig. One day a shepherd discovered a fat pig in the meadow where his sheep were pastured. He very quickly captured the porker, which squealed at the top of its voice the moment the shepherd laid hands on it. You would have thought, to hear the loud squealing, that the pig was being cruelly hurt. But in spite of its squeals and struggles to escape, the shepherd tucked his prize under his arm and started off to the butcher's in the marketplace. The sheep in the pasture were much astonished and amused at the pig's behavior, and followed the shepherd and his charge to the pasture gate.
"What makes you squeal like that?"
asked one of the sheep.
"The shepherd often catches and carries off one of us, but we should feel very much ashamed to make such a terrible fuss about it like you do."
"That is all very well,"
replied the pig with a squeal and a frantic kick.
"When he catches you, he's only after your wool, but he wants my bacon."
Gree!
It is easy to be brave when there is no danger. The Travelers and the Purse. Two men were traveling in company along the road when one of them picked up a well-filled purse.
"How lucky I am,"
he said.
"I have found a purse. Judging by its weight, it must be full of gold."
"Do not say, 'I have found a purse,'"
said his companion.
"Say rather, 'We have found a purse, and how lucky we are.' Travelers ought to share alike the fortunes or misfortunes of the road."
"No,"
replied the other angrily.
"I found it, and I am going to keep it."
Just then they heard a shout of
"Stop thief!"
and looking around saw a mob of people armed with clubs coming down the road. The man who had found the purse fell into a panic.
We are lost if they find the purse on us,
he cried.
No,
Replied the other.
you did not say we before, so now stick to your I. Say I am lost.
We cannot expect anyone to share our misfortunes unless we are willing to share our good fortune also. The Lion and the Ass. One day, as the lion walked proudly down a forest aisle, and the animals respectfully made way for him, an ass brayed a scornful remark as he passed. The lion felt a flash of anger, but when he turned his head and saw who had spoken, he walked quietly on. He would not honor the fool with even so much as a stroke of his claws. Do not resent the remarks of a fool. Ignore them. The Frogs Who Wished for a King. The frogs were tired of governing themselves. They had so much freedom that it had spoiled them, and they did nothing but sit around croaking in a bored manner and wishing for a government that could entertain them with the pomp and display of royalty, and rule them in a way to make them know they were being ruled. No milk and water government for them, they declared. So they sent a petition to Jupiter asking for a king. Jupiter saw what simple and foolish creatures they were, but to keep them quiet and make them think they had a king, he threw down a huge log, which fell into the water with a great splash. The frogs hid themselves among the reeds and grasses, thinking the new king to be some fearful giant. But they soon discovered how tame and peaceable King Log was. In a short time, the younger frogs were using him for a diving platform, while the older frogs made him a meeting place, where they complained loudly to Jupiter about the government. To teach the frogs a lesson, the ruler of the gods now sent a crane to be king of Frogland. The crane proved to be a very different sort of king from old King Log. He gobbled up the poor frogs right and left, and they soon saw what fools they had been. In mournful croaks they begged Jupiter to take away the cruel tyrant before they should all be destroyed.
How now?
Cried Jupiter.
Are you not yet content? You have what you asked for, and so you have only yourself to blame for your misfortunes.
Be sure you can better your condition before you seek to change. The Owl and the Grasshopper. The owl always takes her sleep during the day. Then, after sundown, when the rosy light fades from the sky and the shadows rise slowly through the wood, out she comes ruffling and blinking from the old willow tree. Now her weird
Hoo-hoo! Hoo-hoo!
echoes through the quiet wood, and she begins her hunt for the bugs and beetles, frogs and mice she likes so well to eat. Now there was a certain old owl who had become very cross and hard to please as she grew older, especially if anything disturbed her daily slumbers. One warm summer afternoon, as she dozed away in her den in the old oak tree, a grasshopper nearby began a joyous but very raspy song. Out popped the old owl's head from the opening in the tree that served her both for door and for window.
Get away from here, sir,
she said to the grasshopper.
Have you no manners? You should
at least respect my age and leave me to sleep in quiet.
But the grasshopper answered saucily that he had as much right to his place in the sun as the owl had to her place in the old oak. Then he struck up a louder and still more rasping tune. The wise old owl knew quite well that it would do no good to argue with the grasshopper, nor with anybody else for that matter. Besides, her eyes were not sharp enough by day to permit her to punish the grasshopper as he deserved. So she laid aside all hard words and spoke very kindly to him.
"Well, sir,"
She said,
"if I must stay awake, I'm going to settle right down to enjoy your singing. Now that I think of it, I have wonderful wine here, sent me from Olympus, of which I am told Apollo drinks before he sings to the high gods. Please come up and taste this delicious drink with me. I know it will make you sing like Apollo himself."
The foolish grasshopper was taken in by the owl's flattering words. Up he jumped to the owl's den, but as soon as he was near enough so the old owl could see him clearly, she pounced upon him and ate him up. Flattery is not a proof of true admiration. Do not let flattery throw you off your guard against an enemy. The Wolf and His Shadow. A wolf left his lair one evening in fine spirits and an excellent appetite. As he ran, the setting sun cast his shadow far out on the ground, and it looked as if the wolf were 100 times bigger than he really was.
Why?
Exclaimed the wolf proudly.
See how big I am. Fancy me running away from a puny lion. I will show him who is fit to be the king, he or I.
Just then an immense shadow blotted him out entirely, and the next instant a lion struck him down with a single blow. Do not let your fancy make you forget realities. The Oak and the Reeds. A giant oak stood near a brook in which grew some slender reeds. When the wind blew, the great oak stood proudly upright with its 100 arms uplifted to the sky. But the reeds bowed low in the wind and sang a sad and mournful song.
You have reason to complain,
said the oak.
The slightest breeze that ruffles the surface of the water makes you bow your heads, while I, the mighty oak, stand upright and firm before the howling tempest.
"Do not worry about us,"
replied the reeds.
"The winds do not harm us. We bow before them, and so we do not break. You, in all your pride and strength, have so far resisted their blows, but the end is coming."
As the reeds spoke, a great hurricane rushed out of the north. The oak stood proudly and fought against the storm, while the yielding reeds bowed low. The wind redoubled in fury, and all at once the great tree fell, torn up by the roots, and lay among the pitying reeds. Better to yield when it is folly to resist, than to resist stubbornly and be destroyed.